English Campfire.
They say the best interviews are conversations. My first interview for this job felt like a very polite cross-examination.
Oh man, that is such a real feeling, isn't it?
It really is. And that is actually a direct quote from the narrative we are doing a deep dive on today.
Which is just a fantastic source because, I mean, job interviews are genuinely stressful.
Totally. They're terrifying. Today we're looking at this deeply honest, first-hand story of an applicant going for a communications manager role. It was at a mid-sized pet company, and it was a job they desperately wanted.
But they felt completely underqualified for it.
Exactly, like vastly underqualified. So for all of you listening, our mission today is to break down this exact story step by step. We want to pull out the practical lessons and some key English vocabulary so you can use this stuff in your own life.
Yeah, because this deep dive is, well, it doubles as actual interview preparation for you guys.
Right, so let's just jump right in.
Mm-hmm.
The very first hurdle this applicant faced wasn't even a person. It was just the job description.
Yeah, the job description. Which, for our listeners learning English, let's pause here. The applicant looked at the requirements versus the preferred skills.
Right, the mandatory stuff versus the nice-to-have stuff.
Exactly. Requirements are the things you absolutely must have. Preferred means they want it, but, they'll compromise.
And the gap here was huge. The listing wanted 5 years of experience, fluent English, and team management. But the applicant only had 3 years, decent English, and had supervised like one single intern.
Which is exactly when imposter syndrome kicks in. You look at that and think, I shouldn't even apply.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably just close the laptop. But they didn't. They used what they called the 60 to 70% rule.
Right, which is such a powerful takeaway. If you meet 60 to 70% of the total job requirements, you should apply. The worst they can say is no.
I love that. Job postings are basically a company's letter to Santa Claus, They want a unicorn, but they will happily hire a really great horse.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And let's pause on another key term from the story. Mid-sized company.
Oh, yeah. Why does the size of the company matter so much here?
Because a mid-sized company, usually 50 to maybe 1,000 employees, is the sweet spot for taking a leap of faith.
How so?
Well, startups are too chaotic. They don't have time to train you. And massive global corporations use these rigid computer systems that just automatically reject your resume if you miss one keyword.
Oh, right. The robots just filter you out.
Exactly. But a mid-sized company has the stability of a big business, but the flexibility of a startup.
Yeah.
A real human being might actually look at your resume and say, hey, they don't have 5 years, but let's give them a shot.
Okay, so the applicant takes the leap, they apply. And 2 weeks later, they actually get an email for the next step.
Which brings us to the next vocabulary pause, the phone screen with HR.
Right. HR, human resources. Yeah. And the phone screen with Dana from HR.
Yeah, a phone screen is just a quick, usually 30-minute call. It's not a full interview. HR is just checking to see if you are a viable candidate before they waste a manager's time.
They're looking for red flags.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And Dana asked 2 very tricky questions. Let's highlight these terms. First, she asked about hybrid work, and then salary expectations.
Yeah, hybrid work meaning working some days at home and some days in the office, right?
Exactly. But the salary expectations question, that is the one that trips everyone up.
I have to admit, I always hate that question. Isn't it safer to just say, I'm flexible when they ask how much money you want?
You'd think so, right? But the source actually argues the opposite.
Really? Why?
Because dodging the question makes you look unprepared. Having a specific range ready, saying, based on market research, I'm looking for X to Y, shows confidence.
Huh. So it's better to just put a number out there.
In this early stage, yes. Dana isn't negotiating yet. She just needs to know if the company can even afford you.
That makes a lot of sense. So they pass the phone screen. 3 days later, they get called in for the main event. And the tension just skyrockets.
Oh, absolutely. Because now we hit 2 massive terms for our listeners, the panel interview and behavioral questions.
Right, so a panel interview isn't just one-on-one.
No, it is multiple interviewers at the same time. The applicant was facing the hiring manager, a team lead, and the VP of communications all at once.
Which is just a lot of eyes staring at you.
It's exhausting. And they were asking behavioral questions. Those questions that start with, tell me about a time when...
Ugh. Yes. Tell me about a time you failed. Those are so hard to answer without just rambling on and on.
Which is exactly why the source heavily emphasizes our next vocabulary term, the STAR method. STAR.
Okay, yes. We really need to break this down. Listeners, grab a pen because this is gold. What is the STAR method?
It is the ultimate psychological tool for answering these questions clearly. Let me give you a full, worked example.
Yes, please. Walk us through it.
Okay, say the panel asks, tell me about a time you managed a difficult project. If you don't have a plan, your nerves take over. You just start rambling about your old boss, complaining about deadlines, and you totally lose the point.
You just make a word salad.
Exactly. But STAR stops that. S is for situation. You set the scene. At my last agency, we lost a major client and had 2 weeks to pitch a replacement.
Okay, clear and concise. What's the T?
T is task. What was your specific job? My task, along with one intern, was to completely rebuild the presentation deck from scratch.
Got it. So you're not taking credit for the whole company, just your part.
Right. Now, A is action. This is the most important part. What did you do? I implemented a daily 10-minute meeting to prioritize tasks, and I personally rewrote the executive summary.
Notice you used I instead of we.
Yes, always use I for the action. And finally, R is result. We finished the deck early, the client loved it, and we won the new account.
So situation, task, action, result. It's basically a foolproof storytelling formula.
It keeps your stress brain on a track so you don't derail.
And trust me, the applicant's brain was highly stressed because right after those questions, the panel moved to the practical exercise.
This is where things get intensely real.
So real. Listeners, I want you to imagine this. The applicant is handed a piece of paper. It's a scenario about a product launch. They are told they have exactly 15 minutes to write a 2-paragraph press release.
Just on the spot. Let's pause for the term press release. It's an official statement sent to the media to give them information.
Right, so 15 minutes. The VP of Communications is sitting right across the table, just watching. The clock starts.
My heart rate is going up just hearing it.
It's visceral panic. The applicant stares at the paper. They try to think of the perfect, brilliant corporate words to use. But their mind goes completely terrifyingly blank.
The fight or flight response just shuts down their brain.
Exactly. 4 agonizing minutes pass. Nothing. No typing. Then 5 minutes. The silence in that room must have been so heavy.
When you feel underqualified, a moment like that just confirms all your worst fears.
But then right in the middle of this freeze, the applicant makes a massive pivot. They decide to stop trying to sound like a visionary executive.
They lowered the bar.
Yes, they just told themselves to be real. They stopped trying to use fancy words, and they just typed out the facts in simple, clean English.
Which brings us to our next vocab words. Debrief and jargon.
Right, so the time runs out. The panel reads the work in the debrief, which is just a review session after the exercise.
And what happens?
The intimidating VP reads this very simple, plain document. She nods slowly, and she says the line that changes everything. Most people overwrite under pressure. You kept it clean.
You kept it clean. That is such a powerful turning point.
It really is. They won the VP's respect by not using complex language.
And that ties into jargon. Jargon is complicated, specialized corporate vocabulary, words like synergize or leverage the paradigm.
Which people usually use to sound smart.
Right, but what's fascinating here is that humans default to jargon when we feel insecure.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah, it's an intellectual shield. When you feel like an imposter, you hide behind big words so people won't realize you only have 3 years of experience.
But the VP saw right through that. She knew that clear, simple writing under pressure shows true confidence.
By abandoning the jargon, the applicant showed real executive presence.
That is just amazing. So the interview ends, the applicant leaves, and then the absolute torture begins.
The silence.
5 days go by, total radio silence.
Which brings us to follow-up email and job offer.
Right. So what is the etiquette here? If you don't hear back, do you just panic and email them every day?
Definitely do not do that. The source lays it out clearly. Send a thank you email within 24 hours. That's standard. But if you hear nothing for 4 or 5 days,
Yeah, what then?
a brief, polite check-in is totally fine. It shows you're still interested without looking desperate.
So the applicant sends that polite check-in email on day 5. And on day 6, Dana from HR finally calls back.
And she gives them the verbal job offer.
The job offer. They actually got it. The whole terrifying ordeal was worth it.
It's such an incredible outcome.
Okay, before we wrap up this story, we want to make sure you're absorbing all this. So let's do a quick comprehension check for our B1 and B2 learners.
Let's do it. I am going to ask 4 questions. Listeners, just try to answer these in your head.
Go for it.
Question 1. What was the rule the applicant used to decide if they should apply for the job? Question 2. What does the STAR method stand for?
Oh, that's a good one.
Question 3. What did the applicant do when their mind went blank during the press release exercise?
Yeah, what was their pivot?
And question 4. What was the specific feedback the VP gave about their writing?
All right, let's quickly recap the vocabulary to help them out.
Perfect. So the rule was the 60 to 70% rule. Apply if you meet most of the requirements, even if you lack the preferred skills.
Right. And STAR stands for situation, task, action, result.
Remember the example. Situation, lost a client. Task, rebuild the presentation. Action, I held daily meetings and rewrote the summary. Result, we won the account.
Awesome. And for question 3, when they blanked during the press release, they stopped using jargon. They just wrote simply.
Which leads to the answer for question 4. The VP's feedback during the debrief was, you kept it clean.
You kept it clean. I love that.
And that led to the job offer from HR after they sent a polite follow-up email.
It's just a fantastic roadmap. So if we pull all of this together, there are 3 golden rules here. First, apply even if you don't check every single box. Second, if you blank under pressure, don't give up. Just pivot to being real.
And third, prioritize simple, clear communication over complicated jargon, especially when you're stressed.
Here is where it gets really interesting, though. At the end of the narrative, the source mentions that this specific role completely changed the trajectory of their career.
It opened doors they didn't even know existed.
Exactly. And that outcome almost didn't happen because they initially looked at the job posting and thought about not applying at all.
They almost rejected themselves before the company even had a chance to.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. So I want to leave you guys with a final thought to mull over. Think about an opportunity right now that you are holding yourself back from, just because you feel you don't check every single box. What would happen if you applied the 60% rule today and just stepped into the arena?
Have you ever applied for something you thought you were underqualified for? What happened? Tell us in the comments. Drop the shield, keep it clean, and take the leap. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
See you next time.